Hello, everybody, and welcome in. I'm Griffin.
And I'm John.
And today we're going to talk about bikes.
Bikes?
Yeah, go figure. Something new for us. More specifically, we're going to be taking a look at some new Gazelle bikes.
Just in time for the fall season.
That's right. And then we're going to look at some local USA bikes. We're going to talk some frame builders and local e-bike brands.
There are some options out there, but there are some catches as well.
For sure. And then we have a ton of Tannus gear we're going to be taking a look at.
Flat protection to the max.
And finally, a bit of personal channel news we'll have to go over as well.
In this week's episode of the Weekly Recharge.
All right, so let's just dive right into this week's headlines, starting with the Gazelle bikes that I teased earlier. There are 3 new bikes in their fall lineup. Okay, well, technically 2 new and 1 refreshed, but same thing.
That's right.
So starting things off, there is the Gazelle Easy Flow C7, a focus on accessibility with an elongated frame and a low step over height on this one. It's got a pedal forward design too to allow full leg extension and riders to put feet flat on the ground while stopped. It has a Shimano EP5 mid-drive with 50 Newton meters of torque, comes with a 504 watt-hour battery, and maybe 3 battery sizes offered with 418, 504, or 630 watt-hours. It also has a Shimano Nexus 7-speed gear hub, Schwalbe Big Bend tires, Tektro hydraulic disc brakes, and an MIK cargo rack, cafe wheel lock, side mirror, and more. Comes fully loaded.
Pretty decked out.
And then over on the Arroyo C5 Elite, that one is a refreshed city cruiser with a redesigned step-through frame, Bosch Performance Line mid-drive, and that pairs with the Bosch Flow app as well. Has a Gates belt drive with Shimano Nexus 5-speed gear hub, 540 watt-hour battery on that one, and comes with Schwalbe Energizer Active Plus tires, Tektro hydraulic disc brakes, a quick adjust stem, MIK cargo rack, wheel lock, suspension seat post, and other goodies all included. And then finally, the Arroyo C380 Elite. So this one's more of like a premium city cruiser with stepless shifting and has the same features as the C5 Elite, but with the Enviolo CVT, always a fun system that we really enjoy. So these bikes just look absolutely great. We hope to test them out soon. And this is actually one of those brands that we get a lot of mentions of in the channel on check out some Gazelle bikes. A really loyal fan base here. More premium pricing for sure. Most of these are around $4,000, but they look highly intriguing. Really excited to kind of see that little fender light thing action they got going on there. Very curious about that one.
Looks pretty rad for sure. Yeah. Fingers crossed we get our hands on those sometime in the near future here. Mm-hmm. But moving on to our next story, this comes to us from a company in Portland, Oregon called First Hand Frame Building. They're going to start offering frame building classes next year. So right now the company sells frame building supplies, including very high quality steel, stainless steel, and titanium tubing for making frames. The company's owned by a guy named Chris Blandford, who has his own bike company. It's called Blandford Bicycles, and you should check these things out. They're absolutely gorgeous. But he's currently renovating an 8,000 square foot building for the company's headquarters. And then there's going to be a school incorporated, and there's a 3,000 square foot space devoted to just the workshop. So it's going to include a metalworking shop, a warehouse, a computer lab, an apartment for guest speakers and teachers, a classroom and lecture area, and then also, retail space for what they sell now, those frame building supplies. And then I pulled a quote here from Bicycle Retailer. They just kind of outlined this stuff in a way that I didn't feel the need to change. So it says, the facility will host classes and events for aspiring builders, veteran fabricators, and enthusiasts with rotating guest instructors and resident builders to assist students. The company plans to offer brazing and welding classes, manual machining instruction, CAD, 3DP, and CNC workshops, frame fit and design courses, small business seminars, and full-fledged multi-week frame building classes. So just, I guess, kind of speaking as a craftsman myself, I just really love seeing people pass on their knowledge. And I think it's really cool, not only to see the quality of the owner's craftsmanship here, just with Blandford Bicycles, but, just being able to pass that along. And, with all the tariff stuff going on, there's been a lot of talk about bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., and I think that this may be a step along the way. It at least encourages people to get out there, learn stuff, and then, maybe put that into practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to, just kind of be amazed, do what John and I did yesterday. We just started kind of Googling around and looking at some local frame builders and stuff like that. You can find some true artisans who are doing some really cool stuff with frame building. So again, cool to see it being encouraged and getting more people into it. Next up, though, Dahon is listed on the main board of Hong Kong Stock Exchange. This is actually pretty big news for them. So we talk a lot about electric XPs here in the States, or Brompton folding e-bikes, kind of like some of the OGs of folders. But Dahon is actually the world's #1 manufacturer of folding e-bikes. They are massive over in China. So Dahon's been in business for about 40 years. Back in 2024, the company had 26.3% of the retail volume and 36.5% retail value share in China's folding e-bike market, folding bike market. Businesses on the main board must meet strict financial standards and have a great track record. The stock was labeled as a star stock and also got a super subscription listing, as public subscriptions were oversubscribed well over 7,500 times. So major investors on this one, including Alliance Global Investors Asia Pacific, Harvest, Vekin, Hong Kong, and the Greater Bay Area Development Fund Management, with $127.6 million vested.
It's a lot.
That is a lot.
It's a lot.
So the new capital will be used to build a factory to integrate resources with long-term supportive supplier partners, establishing specialized profit centers for components, frame welding, painting, and assembly. The factory is set to begin production in 2027 and will be able to make 200,000 bikes per year. New funding will also go toward expanding into overseas markets, so we may be seeing some Dahon here in the U.S. Fingers crossed on that front. We've talked to a lot of people who have ridden these. People just say glowing things about them all the time, so it would be cool to see them expand some more.
Agreed. In doing some research for this article, you just came across the fact that they have well over 100 patents related to bicycles, which is pretty insane. They're definitely doing a lot of innovation, and that kind of proves their status as a titan in the industry over there.
100%.
But then wrapping things up for this week, we've got some updates on the 2026 Tern Vektron models. There's going to be some big motor and drivetrain upgrades there. So there's going to be 2 new models. They're going to be called the P5i and the P10. And so they have Bosch Performance Line mid-drive motors that have been upgraded from 65 newton meters of torque to 75 newton meters. The motors are also quieter, and they're capable of being locked remotely via Bosch's Bluetooth app. So if you are a paid subscriber to the Flow Plus system, you also get access to GPS tracking and an alarm system. And then the main differences between the bikes are really in their drivetrain. So the P5i has a Gates belt with a Shimano Nexus gear hub, but then the P10 has a 1x10 chain and derailleur setup. So we got a pretty funny quote here actually from Josh Hahn, who's the team captain at Tern. He said, "It's really hard to build a bike that rides like a great e-bike and folds like a great folding bike. Usually there are compromises made on ride quality, motor power, battery safety, serviceability, weight, or folded size. But with Vektron, we've managed to design a bike that's great on all of those critical parameters, and that's why we call it our Goldilocks bike. It's just right."
Just right.
So, pretty good there. Anyway, so the new models are going to hit some European dealers just next month in October, with other dealers in Europe and things over here in North America showing up around the end of the year or by the end of the year. So prices are going to start at right around 4,000 euros, which is about $4,700 US, and they go up from there. So, definitely a little bit on the pricier side, but these bikes are very highly regarded, and for good reason. We've had our hands on a few Tern bikes, and they've just delivered a very premium experience that is worth the price. So, as always, we'd like to review one. So anybody at Tern, if you're watching, send us one. We'd love to test it.
Absolutely. But that'll do it for this week's news. All right, now we're going to dive into our accessory section, and we were sent dang near everything in the Tannus catalog to check out, which we're really excited to go over with you guys. Today's going to be a little bit of a preview. We're going to do a full review and testing on all of this Tannus gear we were sent. So big shout out and thank you to Tannus for sending this to us. But John, we'll kind of jump in and just break it down, everything we got, and tell people about Tannus and what they're all about.
For sure. Yeah, we've talked about Tannus a little bit here on the show in previous episodes, especially in talking about flat protection. That is really what they specialize in. And the first thing that we're going to talk about right here is the Tannus Armor, which is kind of primarily what the company is known for. So this is essentially a foam insert that fits inside your tire and wraps entirely encases your inner tube and protects that from punctures. So there's up to 15 millimeters of puncture protection on the tread side, but it also provides some sidewall support. Again, just that wraps around there. There are a ton of tire sizes. So this is 20 by 4 up to 20 by 4.8, but there's everything as far as diameter goes from 20 inch up to 29 or 700C, and then widths up to the 4.8. This costs right around $46 per wheel, basically, which, you know, if you're especially using like a rear hub e-bike that, you know, you've changed the tire on that, anything you can do to avoid repeats of that process is probably going to be worth that $46.
The dreaded rear hub motor flat is very much a thing.
It's pretty rough. Yeah, that was like actually my very first experience changing a tire was on a rear hub bike, and I was like, what is this?
Baptism by fire, John.
Yeah, no good. So you can order these with compatible tubes. If you choose to do that, it's like an additional $8 charge. But if you want to use your own tubes, you just have to size down one size. And then, yeah, I mean, this stuff is legendary.
Yeah, absolutely. It is some of the best puncture protection that we've like tried out in limited capacity. Again, we're going to be doing the full testing here. But not only do they have this thing that can kind of encase your tube, you can just go 100% tubeless, actually, which is what this one is over here.
Insane.
So this is the Tannus airless tires, and it is just what it sounds like. There's no air. It's just solid foam for like the entire thing. So 100% puncture proof, impossible to get a flat, obviously. They are rated for up to 3,000 miles of use. You need to measure the width of your rims and provide your current tire size to be directed to the right product, but it will fit wheel sizes from 16 inches to 700C and widths up to 1.75 inches. Those ones go for just about $40 per wheel. But again, it seems like really interesting. Hey, no flats sounds great to me.
100%. Yeah. I mean, they're definitely pretty dense. So, you know, they're not going to give you like the squish that a regular tire would.
But at the same time, it's not like a weird solid thing like scooter or like skateboard tires or something like that. Good point. Where it's like
solid rubber.
Hopefully it's going to be like enough like, you know, like vibration damping there. So like you won't feel it, but hey, you'll never have to worry about a flat, which is a pretty good like trade-off. But
spectacular. And then the last thing here is the Tannus Tubeless Fusion, which is just one of like 4 very similar products. This is essentially like a 2-part liner for EMTBs, including downhill and enduro styles that run tubeless. So you do have to have a tubeless compatible setup ready to go there. So there's like an internal liner and then like an external thing that protects your rim and also gives you that sidewall support. And then this, as well as the original Tannus Armor product, they both have what they call run flat technology. So basically, if you still do end up getting a flat with either of these products, you can still keep rolling just because there's enough material here to keep your tire from just completely collapsing.
Yeah, it shouldn't damage the wheels either, I believe, too. It pads those for a few miles anyway. I'm not sure if you're riding full time that way, but you can get limp along like with a few miles. So that's awesome.
Exactly. So the Tubeless Fusion, that adds about 200 grams of weight to your ride. You can get the 2 basically components of that separately. So those are the Pro and Light products. But then they also have like a gravel specific line as well. And the Fusion Pro runs for about $75 per wheel. Again, just like this is about as good as it gets. You can, in the case of like Tannus Armor, run this like with slime if you're super if you want to go
all out and have all the flat protection humanly possible, yeah. But what we really love about this stuff too is because we talk about it all the time, but e-bikes in particular, a lot of things that would be unpleasant otherwise without a motor, like fat tire e-bikes are a great example. Pedal one of those uphill without a motor, trust me, it is not fun.
It's brutal, yeah.
With a motor, all of the negatives of fat tires kind of go away. So it's kind of the same thing here, like with Tannus. It might add a little bit of weight. It could potentially make it more sluggish depending on what bike you put it in. Mm-hmm. But when you kind of have a motor, it's like, who cares? But now this way you get like flat protection. So obviously there's tons of appeal with this system. We're really excited to kind of like dive in and check out all of their products. So make sure you're subscribed to see those reviews. They should be coming out in the coming weeks.
And we'll have links down in the description if you want to take a look at this stuff. But then also, again, just thank you to everyone at Tannus. All right, and now it is time for the weekly peek behind the curtain, and we're gonna start off with something a little bit different. This is a very special day.
We had our personal news.
Yes, so we celebrated reaching 100,000 subscribers, and as that goes, YouTube then gives you a play button. So we've received that in the mail. We're super stoked about this.
This has definitely been one of those
goals
we were trying to hit and whatnot for like the longest time, and it's finally here. So thank you so much to all of you who have subscribed. We're now at 103,000 subscribers and counting, and we were very excited to finally get this in the mail. We'll have that, proudly displayed somewhere moving forward. But just again, a huge shout out and a huge thank you to all of you for making this possible. This was a fun milestone to hit, and we couldn't have done it without you. So again, thank you sincerely.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Very, very good.
But it's not the only thing we got in the mail, though. We got some other stuff.
We did, yes.
So we also got the Jackrabbit MG
Doble.
That's right. I always
I
want
like
to say
Doble. Doberman. But
Doble. That's right. So we've been looking forward to this one for a while. We covered it on the show a few weeks back. So Jackrabbit, known for their mini micro EV e-bikes. Call them what you want. They don't have pedals, but they're still a lot of fun. This one is a little bit larger, a little bit more stretched out, a little bit more passenger friendly as well. So you can take 2 people on this one, despite it being a smaller, style bike. So we're really excited to get that one into the testing queue and get it tested out. But we did have a few different videos go live this week to talk about as well, starting with, this one was one of mine. Back on Monday, we got the Retrospect Rev live. Very fun to say with all those R words. Radical. But that one is a short tail cargo style e-bike. Really interesting frame design that actually worked really nicely. We loved the BMX handlebar on that one, gave it some really nice handling. And of course, it did really well actually in all of our standardized tests. So check out that review if you're in the market for a short tail cargo bike. And then John, you had a Scott bike video go live.
That's right. This is, the first time I've actually had a review go live in a little bit since I was out for wrist surgery. But yeah, so this was the Scott Silence E-Ride Evo Speed. So that is a class 3 commuter, just gorgeous paint job, chameleon 3 color, fusion thing. Really great pedal assist system, just a wonderful ride and just at a fantastic price. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on, I guess. But
yep. And then I also had the Mach Wheel Basalt 2.0 go live. You know it, you love it. It's one of the most well-known fat tire e-bikes out there. Delivers on everything that you want. 750 watt motor, very strong performance. Power station options. You can actually get some accessories to basically just power different devices straight off the battery, which is pretty cool. But it's also even got the cool new little display that kind of works as a key, so you can pop that off to help lock up and secure the bike. So pretty good one to check out there if you're looking for fat tire e-bikes. All right, now we're just gonna take you on a bit of a bike ride, or rather John's gonna take us on one. John, where are we riding this week?
This week we are headed to the Jackson Hole, Wyoming area. So I'm kind of, continuing your trend of using this as a great method of learning about places that I want to spend more time. And
there's 50 nifty states out there. We got to learn about all of them.
There are, definitely. And as a, reminder, we reference pages from traillink.com often in this segment of the show. They actually have a really cool map function that you can just kind of zoom into places and check out what's around you. That's how I found this. I was like, oh, what's that? And it turned out to be Jackson Hole. So anyway, this is called the Jackson Hole Community Pathway System. And it's actually a network of trails. So there's 37.5 miles of shared use trails that connects the towns of Jackson, Teton Village, and Wilson. The trails in that network are the Russ Garriman Trail, the Melody Ranch Trail, the Wilson Centennial Trail, the Indian Springs Trail, the School Trail, and the Teton Pines / Teton Village Road Pathway. But then there's another one called the North Pathway that runs up to the town of Moose, and that is where Grand Teton National Park is. So absolutely beautiful scenery there, just incredible. Obviously, we'll show some stuff on screen here, but just for a little bit of background here, the master plan for this trail network was approved by the Jackson Town Council and the Teton County Board of County Commissioners back in 2007. And so they've just continued to add on to this trail system. But they had some really cool goals here that stood out. So the first one was to, quote, meet the needs of all levels of bicyclists. And to do that, they wanted to connect neighborhoods, schools, employment centers, and other tourist destinations, that sort of thing. They also wanted this system to meet the needs of pedestrians, Nordic skiers, persons with disabilities, and equestrians. So kind of links up to all the major things for all of those groups. And then, their goal was by 2015, I don't know how this really turned out, but their goal was to shift 10% of transportation to biking and walking by promoting both of those alternative transportation modes. So, you do have some in-town sections here, but outside of the towns, you get views of the Rocky Mountains, the Grand Tetons. There's short grass prairies, riparian areas, woodlands, and some bridges. Again, just amazing scenery if you've never been up there. A community organization that is in the town is called Friends of Pathways, and they're really heavily involved in this trail. They put on a lot of events and things to just get people out and about using the trail system. They actually also teach a bike safety education course at the Jackson Hole Middle School, and that's just designed to get people familiar with the basics of biking. So, pedaling, starting, stopping, speed control, signals, all that stuff. But they also have some separate resources for e-bike specific education. They have a weekly program called Bike to Work Wednesdays, at least during the summer. And so they move around to different locations on the trail. And if you are commuting by bike, you can stop and get free coffee and breakfast treats. That's pretty rad. They've also got an annual bike swap that then this year was held back in May, and it's basically a event that allows people to sell used bikes and things. You have to kind of submit your bikes ahead of time, and then you can sell them whatever you want. But there's also a bicycle film festival that they held back in May, so I had no idea that anything like that existed at all.
Yeah, super cool.
A whole bunch of documentaries and stories and things. And then at least when this goes live yesterday, there will have been a mountain biking event called the Teton Pass Bash, where they have vans and trucks set up to kind of shuttle people and their bikes up to a trailhead where then they can ride down through the pass and, rinse and repeat as necessary. So a lot of cool stuff going on here. Again, just cool town, very bike centric. The pathway itself allows class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes, with one exception of a pathway along the Elk Refuge on the North 89 highway. But then, e-bikes do seem to be a little bit of a topic of debate in the area, and that Friends of Pathways group has a survey on their website. They got a grant from the Community Foundation of Jackson Hole to get public input on e-bike use. And basically, their goal is to see how people feel about e-bikes and maybe what adjustments to laws need to be made. I haven't really spent a lot of time in Wyoming here, but it seems like they have a lot of cool stuff going on. As always, if you've been able to take advantage of this trail network, if you've been up there and visited Grand Teton, let us know down in the comments section. And
I can let you know. I'm sitting right next to you.
Oh, you've been?
I haven't been on this trail system specifically, but I've spent a lot of time around the Tetons actually.
Cool.
Got some family friends who have a cabin up that way. I've been there a few times. Honestly, Wyoming is one of those places. It's like when I think of getting out in nature, it's right up there on my list. It's not away from people, but it's just a lot quieter, just a lot more serene things worth checking out. And this just sounds like such a cool top to bottom, cycling forward, thing you've stumbled across here. You have education, you got bike swaps, you got group ride events, you even got a bike film festival, for crying out loud. I mean, this is just as bike friendly as it gets. So, with that survey, we'd encourage anyone thinking about that survey to vote yay on e-bikes, but that's just our opinion. But really just a cool find this week, John. So awesome stuff.
Thanks. Yeah, I know we've talked a lot about a lot of individual trails here. It's been a while since we've talked about a city with really, bike infrastructure and with a culture centered around bikes. So very cool and very surprised to see this. But yeah, if you've got any trails that you want us to highlight in this section, make sure you let us know down in the comment section. Or as always, that email address, questions@electricbikereport.com.
All right, now we're going to jump into John and I's favorite section, question and comments from you, our audience, across YouTube videos or left on our website or sent to us at questions@electricbikereport.com. Drop us a line. We could be featuring you next week, but let's take a look at who we got this week.
What are we starting off with?
So we're starting off with Oda0111 on the U Free Solar Sparrow YouTube review, who said, tariffs are an excuse for price hikes. You shouldn't fall for that if you want to be seen as objective. I took the time to respond to that one where I said, hey, cycling industry margins are pretty slim. Raising cost of goods via tariffs will have a direct effect on what the brands need to charge to remain viable, and that's just an objective fact. I got a response there that said, companies that source most or all of their parts outside of the US so they can maximize their profits by not paying a living wage to workers here need to be told that that's not acceptable. You look at this in two ways. One, your foreign supplier cannot afford to lower their cost and must pass the tariffs on to you. Or two, they could easily lower their prices but choose not to because they want to squeeze you because you got no production capability and they know they own you. I'll insist on going with number one because the incentive structure for YouTube reviewers right now is to praise outsourcing and ignore the dangerous dependency it causes. I'd like to see more channels at least try and support some local manufacturers and not constantly running with the overused tariff is to blame for everything talking point. Greed is not a legitimate market force. Stop enabling it. So that was a pretty long response. We kind of wanted to give a more in-depth, detailed response of our own because we do talk about tariffs a lot. And again, this is one of those things where the cycling industry, like, it really does put a stress and strain on it, wouldn't you say, John?
100%. I mean, again, we've talked about this subject ad nauseum, and the fact that over the past year and a half that we've just seen a ton of price hikes, a ton of chaos in the industry as brands are like really trying to figure out how to deal with this ever-changing situation. So yeah, definitely starting off with a little bit of a banger here this week. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff to get into here. So we'll break it down. Bear with me as we go through this. But bottom line is that, like, tariffs can be split three ways. So I guess let's start off. What is a tariff? It is a tax on an imported product. So that tax can either be paid or absorbed by the original manufacturer overseas. It can be paid or absorbed by the importing retailer, or that cost can be passed on to consumers. And a blend of those things is usually what happens, with at least a portion of the cost being passed on to the consumer. And we've got some data here to back that up. This is not just us, spouting our own opinions or whatever. There's plenty of stuff to back this up. So looking over at econofact.org, which is a nonpartisan publication that is designed to bring key facts and incisive analysis to the national debate on economic and social policies. Those are their words, not mine. So they put out a study that examined the rising costs of imported goods as well as prices of domestically produced products in conjunction with the changes that we've seen recently with changes in U.S. tariff policy. So I pulled a quote here from their article that says, "Our findings are consistent with a slow and gradual pass-through of tariffs to consumer prices. The fact that domestically produced goods also experienced price increases, primarily in categories directly competing with imports, highlights the broad reach trade policy can have. But overall, the magnitude of price changes thus far remains modest relative to the size of the tariff announcements." So basically that just goes on to say that brands do seem to be absorbing a part of it, but there is plenty of evidence to show that they are passing at least, again, a portion of that cost on. But moving on to something from taxfoundation.org, they have a really great article called "Who Pays Tariffs? Americans Will Bear the Cost of the Next Trade War." And that gives just a ton of examples of tariffs being at least partially passed on through consumers. But then another source here, and this is from an interview from the Harvard Kennedy School, and that is the Harvard in Cambridge, Massachusetts. That's sort of their public policy school. They interviewed a guy named Robert Lawrence, who's the professor of international trade and investment there. And he said that, quote, "The evidence suggests that by and large, tariffs are likely to be passed through to American consumers who purchase the products on which the tariffs have been levied. But there's also evidence that in some cases, foreigners might lower their prices and therefore implicitly pay some of the tariffs." So again, a combination of things, but by and large, at least a portion of the tariff hikes that we've seen are being passed on to consumers.
And
so,
just to jump in just really quickly, John, we have had a lot of different conversations with brands on this very subject and how much they are absorbing. Now, obviously, I cannot go into details. Those are kind of off the record topics.
That's fair,
but
yeah.
numerous, CEOs, leaders of companies have basically said they are going to absorb what they could in the margins. But at the end of the day, there is certain amounts you have to charge to remain viable. So again, they really have tried to do what they could, but sooner or later, you have to just start charging more to the consumer as well in order to stay afloat.
So all of that was basically to back up Griffin's response to the original comment here. But we've got some additional stuff to dive into, and that is really the goal of tariffs. It is designed to encourage people from relying on so many imports, but it's also designed to encourage domestic manufacturing. When it comes to bikes and e-bikes, there's really not any of that happening. We've talked about that on the show as well. So there are some small companies that are making bike frames by hand. We talked about the one in Portland earlier on. But outside of that, companies that are based here in the US are really just assembling their bikes from foreign components that are imported because we don't have the infrastructure or the manufacturing facilities here in the US. So, and that really comes down to the fact that e-bikes are really complicated. There are a ton of parts there. Even a regular bike is pretty complicated. You have drivetrain components, brakes, tires, all of those things are made by different companies, but then you add into the electrical components on an e-bike. You've got your motor, your battery, your controller, your display, all of the button panels, everything like that. Those are oftentimes, many of those parts are made by the same company, but again, these are spread across a variety of companies based in different locations. And if we are looking specifically at places overseas where there is a lot of bike infrastructure, there are actually entire cities in China and Taiwan that are built around bicycle manufacturing factories, infrastructure, that sort of thing. So there's a city in China called Suzhou, if I'm saying that right, I hope. That is where Bafeng and Aikima are based. Bafeng is, of course, one of the largest motor manufacturers in the world. But then over in Taiwan, there's a city called Taichung, and that is where SRAM and Giant are headquartered. Giant, of course, is the largest bicycle frame manufacturer in the world. So again, we don't have these things here. So you can certainly find pieces and parts to bikes made here, but there just really isn't a way for any brand to completely build a bike or e-bike from the ground up using entirely American-made parts. So that's just kind of the fact of the matter. Unfortunately, that's where it is. We're going to dive into some more stuff later on that kind of relates to this. But bottom line, we'd love to see more domestic manufacturing here. There just needs to be incentives for that to happen, for brands to actually build manufacturing facilities here. And we don't have that. So until then, we are just very opposed to the tariffs and the fact that that results in prices going up.
Yeah, especially where this industry is concerned. I leave the door open. There's possible good that tariffs can do. But again, I think John, did a really good job illustrating just the fact that without our ability to produce in mass here, it's just...
It is what it is.
It's tough for our particular industry, which is why we're generally opposed to it.
Definitely.
All right, so switching gears a little bit here, though, we have a different question from I Love Photography, I believe.
That's right. So this person says, sorry for those who've purchased non-UL approved bikes, but unfortunately these bikes put others at risk. Buy Bosch powered bikes and you'll be safe from fires and have a dependable e-bike.
Well, that, is a fairly true statement there at the end.
Absolutely.
Get some, certain... brands are known for making dependable things that are UL certified and whatnot. So we, of course, have always been advocates here for UL certification on e-bikes. Just peace of mind, it's gone through the proper checks and channels for it to be a safe and effective system. Yep. So you're, again, correct. Bosch is one of those companies that does an incredible job. Many of their EMTBs, their urban cargo trekking e-bikes all come UL certified. So again, any bike with a UL 2849 certification and batteries with 2271 should be considered safe as long as they are cared for and used properly, which is on the end consumer at that point. We want to shout out some other great brands as well that typically are going through all of those checks every time. That includes Shimano, Bafeng, Ananda, Mahle, Yamaha, Fazua, Broza, TQ, and Mevice, and there are even more out there. It's on an exhaustive list by any means, but there are a lot of really good brands. This is why we always encourage people, again, looking at like $1,000 is up as the general starting point, because this is when you start meeting brands who are meeting those requirements of safety standards, and you're getting what you pay for in that regard. When you go shopping in the bargain bin, good luck.
Good luck, exactly, yeah.
But again, those are some well-established brands, and always just go for the reputable company. I would also just point out one other thing too. It's not uncommon for when, say, like a new product comes up, it might not say UL certified yet. You can always check with the brand, especially if it's kind of like made with parts from some of those brands. If you see something that's like a Fazua motor, it doesn't say it's UL certified yet. It's possible that it's in the process of doing it. That does take time and money. So again, just go with the known names and you'll have yourself a safe product.
And yeah, that's to add on that's something that we will mention in our reviews if that is the case when we are reviewing a product. So you can always keep an eye on our written reviews. If we have a section for UL certification in our written reviews, and there, if it is not already UL certified, we will say in progress or coming soon.
Or sometimes I'll put compliant because it's a system used before on a different model that was, but I have to get it certified again for new models. So
that's right. Yep.
All right. Let's see.
Moving on.
Next, we have Amidazad. Probably butchered that one. 4832 on last week's episode of the show, who said, maybe if all those e-bike companies start making their bikes right here in the United States would be much better for our economy instead of China, and maybe they will make more reliable e-bikes. Personally, I don't mind paying a little bit more for US-made quality and safe e-bikes. Okay, fair point. Back on this topic, but there are actually some US stuff that you can look into.
Yeah, that's what I did a deep dive in here for. And this is, again, kind of a continuation building on what we started talking about at the beginning of this section here, but there's actually a really cool list of e-bike and bike manufacturers on a website called allamerican.org that I stumbled on. A shout out to that organization who did a great job putting that list together. But, you know, just kind of building on what we said in question number 1 there, most brands out there are just assembling bikes from imported components. Some do make frames by hand and, you know, maybe some other components, but, you know, the things that we're talking about here still fall into those buckets. But looking at a few of the brands that are on that list, so there's Christini, that's a maker of EMTBs and all-terrain fat bikes. Basically, my goal with this section was just to kind of highlight price differences, right? So we're just going to run through the lowest prices that these companies offer. So this Christini, they have a fat bike that starts at $5,795. Next up is a company called Moots, and they make electric gravel bikes. So their bikes start at $7,500. Then we have HPC, which stands for High Power Cycles. They make EMTBs, electric dirt bikes, that sort of thing. Their lowest price that I could find was, at least outside of a clearance deal, was $3,995. There's a company called Bike Friday that's actually super cool. They make folding bikes that are analog, but you can add like an electric assist upgrade. So the lowest price bike that they have with that upgrade is $2,775. And then there's a company called Mav Hunt that makes like an all-terrain hunting e-bike, and that one starts at $5,999. So, you know, there's definitely some very cool stuff here, but I think that it's pretty plain to see when looking at this that I would say at the very least, you're looking at like a $2,000 price hike over something that you might get from a company importing their bikes.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, kudos if you are willing to spend that extra money, but I personally don't feel like most folks out there are going to have the capital to do that.
And we see here how it can increase the cost when you're doing something that has more stateside involvement. But again, if you are someone who wants to support American industry like as much as you possibly can, just don't overlook the fact that a lot of these companies are actually headquartered in the United States and they do employ a lot of people locally.
Well said.
I mean, I've toured like Electric down in Phoenix, Arizona a couple of different times. Like there are just dozens and dozens. I want to say they had like 70 people working for them. Don't quote me on that, but dozens of people there. I've gone through electric bike companies like Facility in California. There are definitely companies who are supporting American jobs. So when you're purchasing a bike from them, you are helping support American, even if the parts are manufactured, assembled somewhere else and then brought here. There's still a lot of ways you can help out an American company if they're headquartered here as well. So don't, you know, discount or discredit that too quickly either.
Well said. Appreciate the addition there. But moving things right along here. So this is actually a little bit of a fun one, something a little bit different. We had 2 comments that I'm going to read kind of in sequence here. One was from last week's episode of the show. The other one was from Griffin, your Retrospect Rev review on YouTube, which is indeed a lot of R's.
Really is.
So the first one from last week's episode of the show comes to us from Zingaron, who says, new subscriber, the Electrified Latina suggested your channel. She referred to you as one of the most professional, thorough, and reliable e-bike channels on YouTube. So thank you.
Thank you.
And then the one from the Rev review was from New Easy Fun, who said, Electrified Latina sent all her viewers to your channel and said you were the best.
Well, first of all, thank you so much to Celine, the Electrified Latina. Greatly appreciate it. You know, ran into her a few times at different industry events. She is a great person. So thank you so much. And welcome to all the new subscribers coming to us from her channel. Welcome aboard. Happy to have you here. And, you know, we do take pride in trying to give you the most thorough and detailed reviews out there and bring professionalism to it. So, man, welcome aboard.
Fist bump. That's
Fist
right.
bump. All right.
And as always, if you have any questions that we can answer, drop them down below or that email questions at electricbikereport.com. But we are not done with this section
All right,
here.
It looks like one more to go, or a couple more to go, actually. So this one comes to us from Gary XT5N on the Velotric Breeze 1 YouTube video, who says, I've seen at NL Biking bad-mouthing Velotric and the Breeze 1 here and on other reviewer sites as well. He said another reviewer said the bike weighs 58 pounds and you say it's 50. Can you confirm the weight, please? He can also make claims, and I quote, the motor's not 750 watts. It's physically not large enough to fit the copper wiring required to be a 750 watt, nor does it use the required minimum controller amperage to be a 750 watt rated system. They are literally lying. So I'm not sure how he thinks he knows this, as he doesn't explain his reasoning. Like so many naysayers, they just spew garbage with no facts to back them up. Can you, EBR, a highly respected review site, please confirm or deny these rather ridiculous statements? Thank you.
Well, yeah. So I'm not sure about NL biking, but
Not sure either.
Anyway, we'll address these regardless. So as far as weight goes, we do hands-on weighing of every single e-bike that we get in the door, both with and without the battery, if applicable. And so we can confirm that we weighed our Breeze 1 at 50.1 pounds, and we tested the large frame size. So if you have the smaller size, that may weigh a little bit less, but probably not a huge difference. As for motor wattage, though, that is definitely a complicated subject. Starting off with his comment about size. Size doesn't really mean anything as far as motors go, and I think a really good example of that is the Ride One Up Roadster V3. So that bike has a 500-watt rear hub motor, and that's one of the small, if not the smallest, 500-watt motors that we've seen. In fact, we questioned it when we first got that bike, but that bike absolutely proved itself, and especially in our hill test, even just like the peppiness of it, that thing is pretty punchy for its size.
Ended up being one of the faster city bikes we've had come through the doors. So, and
has a throttle that actually did okay on our hill test, if I remember right. But as far as the Breeze 1, we don't know who specifically manufactures Velotric's motors, but we do know that they have a team of engineers that designs them, that they work in conjunction with a leading manufacturer to actually get the parts made. So, if we were to actually test it and find out exactly what the nominal wattage is, we would need an expensive piece of equipment that is called a dynamometer, also known as a dyno. And, that's just not really something that we're looking to get into, at least at this point in time, just due to the cost and investment there. Although it would be cool to have. So, if anybody has one,
anyone out there with a spare dyno they want to donate, by all means, we'll take the donation.
Send our way, yeah. But as for now, though, we pretty much just have personal experience and test data to go by. So let's kind of look at some of the numbers here. I basically looked at comparing the Breeze 1 with a couple of different bikes. So number one, the Pace 500.3. So that has a 500-watt rear hub motor, and it's basically the same bike. As far as apples to apples comparisons go, like those are about as close as you're going to get.
When you're kind of like crossing and comparing two different brands, they clearly were trying to like execute on the same themes there.
Definitely. And that's because the Pace 500 is a great bike, and the Breeze 1 is as well. But then on the other end of the spectrum, we'll take a look at the Velotric Discover 2. So that's a little bigger, beefier, heavier, full-size commuter that has a 750-watt motor. So as far as specs go, if we're talking about each of those three motors, so the Pace 500.3, that, again, nominal 500-watt motor peaks at 864 watts and produces 60 newton meters of torque. The Breeze 1 is rated at 750 nominal with an 1150 watt peak and 65 newton meters of torque. And then the Discover 2's 750 watt motor has an 1100 watt peak and 75 newton meters of torque. So if we are looking at our hill test results, and these are all from our old location, that is Hellhole Trail. So the
Rest in peace.
Yes, rest in peace. That's right. But anyway, the PS 500.3 throttle, that result was 2 minutes and 9 seconds. The pedal time was 1 minute and 28 seconds. The Breeze 1 was actually a second slower on throttle, so that was 2 minutes and 10 seconds, but significantly faster on pedaling, and that was 1 minute and 21. And then the Discover 2 had a significantly faster time on throttle, that was 1 minute 40, and the pedal time was pretty close, just a little bit faster at 1 minute 17. So if we're looking at the throttle results in particular, it's very easy to just take those numbers and make an assumption, but throttle programming is something that we've noticed really does vary a lot, and Velotric specifically does tend to favor pretty gradual throttle acceleration. So I wouldn't necessarily pay too close attention to those numbers. But if we're looking at the pedal test results, the Breeze was, in the middle between the Pace and the Discover 2, but a little bit closer to the Discover 2. So then if we're looking at sort of personal experience, the Breeze 1 definitely was noticeably peppier than the Pace 500. And then comparing it to the Discover 2 is a little bit tricky just because there's such a big difference in weight. But performance-wise, again, kind of does fall in the middle. All of that is to say, bottom line, we can't really know for sure without that piece of very expensive equipment, but there does seem to be a difference. It does seem to really kind of fall right in the middle there, so it's hard to say for sure whether their nominal rating is 500 or 750, but we have no reason to doubt Velotric, so I don't think you guys should either.
Barring further evidence, no reason to wonder otherwise at the moment. But
exactly. Moving on to our last question, though. So this came to us from the website. This was the Rev review, Griffin. This came to us from someone named Q, which if you are a Star Trek fan, you may know who I'm talking about.
I think he's actually the guy that made James Bond's weapons.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's right.
So anyway, this person said, hey, what do you think about the Giant Roam E Plus GTS now that it's $1,200? Is it worth it to buy over your recommended bikes of 2025? Good question.
That is a good question. I can answer to this one a little bit just because we haven't officially tested this here on the channel. I've ridden it a little bit. My father-in-law actually owns one. Very cool. So we can talk about it a little bit. So first of all, just a little clarification here. So the small and medium frames are the only ones available with the $11.99 price. Both the large and the extra large are still going for $27.50. So again, haven't reviewed it. It's a 2022 model. It's a little bit older, but it still has some pretty good tech on there, including the sync drive mid-drive motor from Yamaha, which has 6 different sensors, so similar to the Crosscore Wabash here. Gyroscopic one.
Exactly. It senses when you're going uphill, basically, to give you some extra.
Yeah, exactly. So this one in particular has 50 Newton meters of torque. So the pedal assist, it's very much kind of more on the natural side. This is more like mid-power by today's standards. There's definitely more powerhouse motors out there. But if you are looking for something with pretty good boost of natural assist, it's going to favor that. It has a 400 watt-hour battery, which should give you a lot of juice to power its, relatively small 250-ish watt motor. Other parts that look good on it include the Suntour NEX suspension, Tektro HD M275 hydraulic brakes, a 9-speed Shimano Alivio drivetrain, and the 700x45C Giant crosscut gravel tires. So seems like a good buy for the low-end price, but of course, some newer e-bikes on our best 2025 list may have some features that you prefer, some nice value there as well. They've got security things, swappable torque and cadence sensors, more powerful motors, throttles, etc. So there are, different things to kind of weigh into the grand equation, but you can't really argue with the savings there. Down to $1,200 is pretty good pricing at the end of the day.
Especially after all the things we talked about with prices going up due to tariffs and all that. Yeah, that's a steal. But anyway, yeah, thanks to all of you again for sending in your questions. We hope you learned something this week. And as always, if you have any questions you want us to get to on next week's episode of the show or later, you can write to us on our individual reviews, either here on YouTube or on the website, or again, that email address, questions@electricbikereport.com, or again, in the comments on this video. All right, you know what time it is?
It is time for
Deals of the Week. Deals of the Week.
All right, and we got some pretty good ones to talk about. We actually kind of previewed one in the question section, though.
Yeah, I mean, definitely wanted to hit this one just because, man, that one stood out to me. The giant clearance sale, again, that Roam E Plus GTS, one that we have not tested and reviewed personally, although, Griffin, you have ridden it a little bit.
Yep.
But that has a bunch of models on sale with up to $4,301 in savings. But the Roam is, again, with the small and medium frame, $11.99, and then with the large and extra large size, you're looking at $27.50. But, man, that on the low end, that's a killer deal.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then moving on, we've also got a sale from Scott. So a bike that we mentioned earlier when we were talking about reviews that went live, the Scott E-Ride Evo Speed Commuter, 50% off right now, down to $3,300. So just really, really awesome savings on that.
Yeah.
And then another one, this is a review we actually have in the works right now, the Voltage E-Ride 920 EMTB. So that one is 15% off right now at $5,610. That one is a really, really, really good lightweight EMTB, only 42 pounds, which is pretty much a featherweight in the EMTB community, and also has the TQ HPR 50 motor, just hyper realistic and just as quiet of a motor as you're ever going to ride. So if you're the type of person that you like getting in nature, you don't want the whir of the motor, that's a good EMTB to keep an eye on.
But that's not all. We also have the Rad Power Bikes flash sale. So this video is going to go live on Sunday. The sale ends at the end of this day when you see this video. So be sure to take advantage of this stuff. But starting off with the Rad Rover 6 Plus. So a little bit of an older fat tire model, but really good price on that. So that is $400 off, down to $11.99. And then there's some other deals as well, but I wanted to highlight something that they call the Just In Case Kit, and that is included with the purchase of select models. That includes the Radwagon 5, the Rad Expand 5 Plus, the Radster Road, and the Radster Trail. This is a really cool kit that includes some tools to help you work on your bike. It has a rechargeable tire inflator. That's one that we actually use here in the shop as well. It comes with a side mirror, a phone mount, a battery case, and some other stuff as well. Nice. But yeah, a lot of good stuff going on there. So make sure to take advantage of those while they last.
Yep, and we'll put links down to all these deals down below so you can check them out. But that'll do it for Deals of the Week. All right, this week's Rider of the Week actually has some crossover with last week's Trail of the Week. Is that right, John?
That's right. So I'm from Ohio. I talked about a trail from my home state called the Maple Highlands Trail, and this commenter has had the experience of riding that trail. So this is Justin White 2951. Thanks for writing in, Justin. He said, I ride Maple Highlands Trail often, Amish country. They're very nice. Give the horse and buggies lots of space, give them a wave, and let them know you're approaching. They are allowed on the trail. Also, you left off Cowboy Creamery in Middlefield for great ice cream. It's right at one of the trailheads, so it's easy to negate any gains you made riding. I read class 2 and 3 and keep it under 20-ish. So very cool. Thanks for letting us know about the ice cream stand there. Always a good way to end or start your ride, I guess.
No better way to end like working up a sweat than immediately loading back up all of those calories that you burned off.
That's right. So if you want to be highlighted in this section of the show, you can, as always, again, let us know down in the comments or email us questions at electricbikereport.com.
Just a big thank you so much for following along on this episode, and again for helping us reach that, like plaque there that we got. We finally got the button. Thank you so much for helping us reach 100,000 subscribers. Hey, they give out another one at 1 million, I believe. So let's keep it going. Make sure to share, information about Electric Bike Report with your friends, family, neighbors, whoever else is into e-bikes. Let them know about the channel, and we'll just keep continuing to grow with your support. So again, thank you so much.
And as always, you can check us out on your favorite podcast platforms. If you just want the audio only format, you can write to us through the methods that we've talked about a bunch on this show. But thanks for sticking around. We'll see you next week on the Weekly Recharge.